Nebraska Territory, 1891. The townsfolk whispered that nobody would claim the crippled woman, until one weathered cowboy declared, "Her spirit burns brighter than mine ever will." The storm had passed 3 days ago, but Lincoln's main trading post still bore its scars. Wagon ruts carved deep trenches through the mud, and merchants displayed their salvaged wares on makeshift tables. Dented pots, waterlogged grain sacks, and leather boots stiff with dried clay littered the square under a hesitant sun. Through the maze of carts and customers came a rickety wagon, its driver yanking hard on leather straps to halt near the platform. In the wagon bed sat a gaunt woman with tangled auburn hair, her frame folded into a makeshift wheeled contraption of oak slats and rusted iron. She clutched a faded shawl like it held her last breath of dignity. This burden walks nowhere, bears no offspring, consumes what she cannot provide, the driver bellowed over the market noise. Any soul willing can claim her. Otherwise, she remains for the scavengers. Snickers and murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. "Appears like damaged goods," someone muttered. "Heaven knows the poor creature," an elderly woman sighed, "but sympathy fills no belly, who'd shoulder such weight." Alina Marsh held her spine rigid. Her gaze stayed dry and unflinching. She surveyed them with the calm of someone who'd already glimpsed the abyss and chosen to keep breathing. At the crowd's edge stood a lean figure in weathered denim and dusty boots. Cole Brennan remained motionless until the wagon driver turned to hawk into the dirt. Then he stepped forward through shallow puddles, his hands finding the chair's wooden handles. "She ain't refuse," Cole stated firmly. "I'll bring her to my spread." The driver whirled around, scowling. "She belongs to my kin's household." "You got no authority?" "She draws breath," Cole interrupted. "That grants her humanity." The man's face twisted. "You reckon you can simply—" Cole's voice carried quiet steel. "I reckon I can and will." The driver hopped down, puffing his chest. "She lived under my roof, ate my provisions. You want her? You compensate me." "You're not peddling livestock," Cole replied evenly. "And I'm not purchasing a soul." "Then she stays put." Cole turned toward the watching faces. His words rang clear as a church bell. "If anyone here values human worth less than a horse's, step up and test me. She's coming home with me." The square fell silent. Several men shuffled uneasily. None advanced. Cole gripped the chair handles again, angling toward the street. Behind him, the driver cursed under his breath, but made no pursuit. As the crowd parted, Alina's fingers tightened on her shawl. Her voice, barely above a whisper, reached Cole's ear. "Do you seek glory in this gesture?" Cole didn't glance down. "Glory ain't what I'm after. I need to see you truly living." They departed without further words, the market sounds fading behind them, replaced by Cole's steady footsteps and the gentle squeak of worn wheel bearings. The trail to Cole's homestead stretched endlessly through swaying grassland. By sunset, they reached a weathered gate marking the boundary of his domain. Cole wheeled Alina across the packed earth yard to a covered porch, then through a door that opened onto a narrow corridor scented with pine and lye soaped at the hallways. End waited a modest chamber-tidy bed with crisp linens, wooden trunk at its base, narrow window overlooking amber wheat fields. A folded coverlet lay ready at the mattress edge. The room showed clear preparation, though Alina couldn't fathom why. Fresh sheets, swept floors, even the bedside lantern stood filled and trimmed for lighting. She looked from the bed to Cole. "You prepared this space." "I had an empty room," he said simply, positioning her chair inside. "It belongs to you." Alina gripped the wheels, propelling herself deeper into the chamber, never breaking eye contact. "I manage alone," nodded. "I know you do." That first night, she handled everything herself, awkwardly transferring from chair to bed, unpacking her threadbare belongings, arranging her few possessions on the trunk. Each movement demanded effort, yet she refused assistance. When supper arrived, Cole didn't enter. Instead, he placed a tray outside her door, soup bowl, thick bread crust, fresh water pitcher. Food's ready, his calm voice announced through the wood. Only after long silence did his footsteps retreat. The routine continued through following days. He'd knock once, leave a meal, depart wordlessly, unless she called him. He never crossed the threshold uninvited. One dawn, as light filtered through her window, Alina discovered something new on her pillow, a soft square of folded cotton. She reached for it, finding a handkerchief, aged but clean, with delicate embroidery along the edges. A careful M adorned one corner in elegant script. She studied it for long minutes before wheeling to the doorway. Cole stood on the porch. Oiling the squeaky hinges of the screen door, she held up the cloth. "This belongs to you." "It was my mother's," Cole said, not pausing his work. "Why offer it to me?" Finally, he set aside his oil can and met her eyes, because I suspect nobody. "Ever asked how you wish to live your life?" Her fingers closed around the fabric. "And you believe this cloth asked that question? Says you possess something personal here," Cole answered. "Even if it's only a piece of cotton." Lena said nothing. She turned the handkerchief in her hands. Feeling the raised stitches, the weight of fabric worn smooth by time. For the first time since the marketplace, her shoulders relaxed slightly. Cole returned to his hinges, and the sound of metal turning under his touch filled the quiet space between them. Days lengthened as spring winds carried the scent of turned soil across the yard. Alina began spending mornings on the back porch, her chair wheels settling between the planks, observing Cole's work. He never called her woman or other names she'd learned to fear. Each time he passed, the greeting remained constant. "Morning, Miss Elena," he'd say, tipping his hat as if she wore Sunday silk. The first time, she'd nearly smiled, not from humor, but because hearing her name spoken without pity sounded foreign to her ears. She'd needed a moment to respond. "Morning," she'd managed, her voice rusty from disuse of courtesy. Cole showed her how to scatter feed for the chickens without letting them nip her fingers, how to spread grain wide so smaller birds claimed their share. He fashioned a shallow wooden tray for her lap so she could transport eggs from the coop without spillage. "You ever plant anything?" he asked one afternoon, kneeling in the garden row. "Not since childhood," she replied. "Well, it's identical too then," he said. "Only now you do it seated." He dug a hole, pressed a seed into her palm. She lowered it into the earth, covered it, patted it firm. The soil felt cool against her skin. For a moment, she sensed something else had been planted. Too, something invisible but vital. By the third week, her hands had grown confident with dirt. She didn't notice at first that Cole had begun positioning his tasks near the porch whenever she sat outside. He never claimed it was for conversation, but the silence between them had started filling with small, steady words. Late afternoon brought the sound of approaching hoofbeats. A tall man in a brown duster rode up the drive, dust coating his boots. His eyes swept the property before settling on Alina. "You," he said, dismounting, "you're coming with me?" Cole emerged from the stable, wiping his hands on a rag. "State your purpose." The man pulled folded papers from his coat. "I'm her deceased husband's uncle. She was abandoned on our land. This document says she must be returned. Family property. Gone missing, worth settling a debt." Alina gripped her chair arms, pulse thundering. "I am not property." Cole moved between them, his shadow falling across her. One hand rested casually but meaningfully on his gun belt. "In this territory," Cole said evenly, "property doesn't breathe, and she's breathing just fine." The man's mouth tightened. "That paper's legal, and show it to someone who values ink over blood," Cole replied. His voice stayed level, but weight filled it like gathering storm clouds. The uncle looked past Cole, his eyes sharp with warning. "You'll rue crossing our family, perhaps," Cole said, "but not today." The man hesitated, then swung back onto his horse. Dust rose behind him as he galloped toward the road. Cole remained there for long moments, watching the trail until the rider vanished. When he finally turned back, Alina was still staring at him. Her hands had loosened from the chair arms, but her heart still raced. "You didn't have to," she began. "Yes," Cole said, "I did." She swallowed hard, looking down at her lap. "That's twice you've pulled me from the flames." Cole's expression softened. "Then maybe it's time we stop letting folks toss you in." Alina held his gaze for a moment longer. She realized then that Cole hadn't just offered shelter. He'd made a promise, one she hadn't dared hope anyone would make again. And for the first time since the flood, she felt the name he spoke might truly be hers. The morning sky held thin clouds, the air carrying that cool, stubborn breath of late spring. Cole led a saddled chestnut mare into the yard. A curious contraption attached to the leather. It resembled half a seat built from polished pine and iron bolts. Alina rolled her chair closer, eyeing it. "What is that device?" Cole patted the mare's neck. "A brace that locks into the stirrups and cinch. Lets you sit steady without needing your legs for grip." He glanced at her. "I thought you might want to ride again." Her fingers tightened on the chair arms. "I haven't ridden since, I know," Cole said. "But if you want to try, this will keep." "You in the saddle." Lena stared at the contraption, the smell of leather and horse sweat rising in the breeze. "If I fall," Cole said simply, "then you fall and get back up." She drew in a breath. "I'll do it." He helped her transfer from chair to mounting block, then into the strange brace. It held her secure, hips level, torso upright. The mare shifted once beneath her, patient and warm. Cole stepped back. "Take the reins." Alina gripped him. The first few steps were awkward, the mare uncertain of her new burden. Cole walked alongside, saying nothing. He let her feel the motion. The sway, the pull in her arms. By the third circuit of the yard, she was smiling. Then the mare stumbled in a rut. The brace tilted, and Alina pitched sideways. She hit the ground hard, dust kicking up around her. Pain shot through her palms where they scraped earth. Cole stood a pace away. Watching, Alina pushed up on her elbows, breath sharp. "Are you just going to stand there? You need my assistance?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not yet." It took 3 attempts, but she got herself upright, dragging her chair close enough to climb in. Her arms shook, her skirt torn at the hem, but she looked at the mare and said, "Again." Cole's eyes narrowed slightly, not in doubt, but in assessment. "All right." The second fall came half an hour later when she tried to turn the mare too sharply. This time her elbow took the impact, skin raw against dirt. Again, Cole waited silently, until she asked, "Help me, please." He was there instantly, lifting her with care. "That's enough for today." "No," she said, voice low but firm. "One more." They went again and again until the sun dipped lower and shadows grew long. Agreed to stop. She was streaked with dust and sweat, her hair loose from its braid. But her eyes held something new, something fierce. That night, after supper, Alina sat by the window, mending small tears in her apron. She noticed Cole at the table, a spool of dark thread in his hand, her riding skirt folded in his lap. Was sewing the torn seam, his stitches slow but careful. "You can sew," she said. "My mother taught me," Cole replied without looking up. "Said a man who can mend his own clothes will never go begging." She watched him for a long moment. "You didn't have to do that, I know." When he finished, he smoothed the fabric once and set it aside. Their eyes met across the lamplight. There was no pity in his gaze, no trace of the guarded sympathy she'd grown accustomed to. What she saw there was quieter, weightier, respect. Cole stood, collecting the mended skirt. "Tomorrow, we'll try the south pasture's smoother ground," Alina nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "All right." As he left the room, she touched the clean stitches, feeling the strength of the thread. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of fresh earth and horse sweat, and for the first time in months, Alina felt as though she wasn't learning to be less, but learning to be more. The wind carried the scent of rain that afternoon, though clouds hadn't yet gathered. Cole had departed at dawn, heading toward the county seat to purchase seed sacks for spring planting. His final words before riding out had been, "Keep the doors barred, and don't open for anyone." Alina had nodded. By midday, the yard was still chickens, clucked lazily, and the mare in the corral swished her tail against flies. Alina was peeling potatoes at the kitchen table, but she caught movement beyond the fence line. For men on horseback, riding slow, scanning the buildings like they owned the place. She set down the knife, her stomach tightening. The riders halted near the barn. The tallest, wearing a tattered gray coat, dismounted and walked toward the porch, boots crunching on dry dirt. Another man looped reins over the fence post. The third and fourth began drifting toward the corral. Eyes on the mare, Alina wheeled herself to the front door and slid the bolt into place.